Morreu na contramão, atrapalhando o tráfego.
Amor daquela vez,
como se fosse o último.
Chico Buarque is a Brazilian singer-songwriter, guitarist, composer, playwright, writer, and poet. Now, often I'm quite unsure about the pronunciation of some of these names from different cultures, and sometimes Wikipedia gives me pronunciation guides. In this case, it hasn't, and I'm particularly unsure about this because it's spelt in a way that I would say bois, but that just sounds like a noise a chicken would make. Anyway, back to the guy. His career started in the 60s. Unlike other Brazilian MPB music at the time, he was more subtle in his lyrics, but he did still manage to have a prison sentence and a brief exile. I think that was more down to a play that he'd written than his music, and he had to face censorship. He was criticised by some of the Tropicalia people for being too conservative, but I think that was more about his musical style. I've tried to count the albums that are listed on his Wikipedia page, and I got over 60. Hi, my name's Dan. So this is my first encounter with Mr. Buarque, and I understand this is one of his most important albums. When reading stuff about it on Wikipedia, it seems to say that this was a pivotal album for him, and it's actually a very well thought of album in Brazilian pop rock circles. So yeah, it's regarded as one of the best Brazilian albums of all time, and at some point in history, Rolling Stone magazine voted it or declared it to be the best Brazilian album ever. Interestingly, so almost always I try and do these reviews entirely in isolation from the other reviews that are around them. I often record them as I am right now in little batches, and this one is back to back with Transa by Caetano Veloso. And it's hard not to make comparisons because they were both around the same sort of time, both involved in the kind of opposition to the Brazilian government. And there are some similarities to the style, but this is different in some ways. So there is still an emphasis here on guitars and percussion and on the kind of guitar that's used for classical guitar music, so a nylon strum guitar. And there's Latin rhythm stuff going on here, but in some ways it's more traditional. It's more orchestral backing than band backing, and percussion rather than drums, I would say. It feels more 60s. I know it's a 70s album, but only just. It's got a feel of 60s film scores at times. The kind of that kind of music, like the theme tune from Mission Impossible. It's just kind of got that feel to it. It's got the brass and the strings and all these things going on. I think all or nearly all of the singing is in Portuguese. His voice isn't as light. Again, I'm going here again with the comparisons. Isn't as light as Caetano's voice, and the whole thing is darker and has a heavier feel to it, a weightier feel than actually quite a lot of Tropicalia that I've listened to so far. It uses discord more. It's got bigger band sounds going on. And I think Chico's voice itself is also naturally darker. So it's got this kind of overall darkness to it, which is unusual as I say, for this movement. From what I've gleaned about the songs, they are subtly and not so subtly political. He's particularly keen on using things that sound similar, like one that's this isn't one that is used, but in French there's two words, one's for mouse and one's for smile, that are very, very similar, and we have them in English as well, words that are similar sounding, and he uses those to say different things from what you might imagine he's saying. I understand it's a politically important album in the history of Brazilian music. Unfortunately, I don't understand Portuguese, so I don't really get most of that when I'm listening to it as a listening experience. So I found it, as I say, not as light as Transit, and I didn't find it quite as enjoyable either. I mean, I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it, but just not quite as much as I did the previous album. And I'd say overall, it's got a slightly disturbed feel to it, which is interesting. So we're going to round up. That's what I think of this album. I'd love to know, as always, what you think of this. So please do leave a comment. And that's it from me for now.
Vai, meu irmão, pegue esse avião. Você tem razão de correr assim.